Okay, well, good morning and welcome everybody to Conestoga College's Waterloo campus. It seems for many people this may be a first time at the college's Waterloo campus, so we are really glad to have you today and encourage you to explore the campus. It's a beautiful place. As you can see, we still have some construction ongoing. I'm told this should finish at some point before the winter, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm Laura Matheson. I'm the Director of Sustainability here at Conestoga, and on behalf of the Planning Committee, which includes myself, Dr. Michelle Martin, Training Program Specialist with the Waterloo Climate Institute. Michelle, get a little wave. Perfect. And also Dr. Deborah Van Nieten, Academic Director of Teaching Innovation and Excellence at Laurier University, and also the acting AVP of Academics. A very full plate there. But the three of us couldn't be more thrilled that you've chosen to join us this morning here at the Pedagogy Symposium, and we just offer you all a very big welcome. Now, as I look over the crowd, it is so nice to see colleagues from the three institutions coming together in this space. And by this space, I mean for climate action in our community, but also in this physical space, because I don't know about the rest of you, but meeting on screens, I think I've hit my limit there. And it's just really nice to see people in person, get to have a handshake or a hug, and remember, you know, we're all here, we're all in this together. I also want to extend my gratitude to the many community partners who generously accepted our invitation to join us today, and also extend my appreciation to all of you for accommodating the rescheduling of this event. We're so glad that we could allow all of our individuals across the campuses to come together, so just really thankful that we were able to reschedule. Okay, so as many of you know, this is our second Climate Pedagogy Symposium. Our first symposium took place, it was inspired and led by the talented Michelle, and it took place back in May of 2024 at the Balsillie School. Now, at this event, the primary theme was looking at how climate change education is really a transversal theme or a cross-cutting theme. We need to take climate change education out of those traditionally sort of siloed courses about environmental education or sustainability and really recognize that climate is a topic that touches every field of study. Now, based on the symposium, the Waterloo Climate Institute put together this beautiful visual that really brings together the various themes and topics that were investigated during that original symposium together. And I show this because some of the themes that we discovered during that initial session together, we will build on and further develop in our discussions today. Okay, so you can expect to see some of these themes carry through. Now, also following the event, the Climate Institute compiled a list of recommendations for how best to incorporate climate pedagogy into higher education. And as you can see on this diagram, again, another beautiful production from the Climate Institute, that the ways to incorporate climate pedagogy kind of fall into these two broad categories. So the first being institutional change, so looking at factors such as supportive environments for instructors to provide opportunities for collaboration, but then also at the course level as well. So again, looking for supports such as teaching and learning strategies, building community partnerships, and ways to actively and effectively engage with climate emotions in the classroom. So two, again, sort of primary findings in terms of recommendations for how we can incorporate climate pedagogy into higher education. And you may recall as well that following the symposium last year, Michelle and her team reached out to participants to see if there was some interest to engage in a study. And they connected with, I believe it was 11 faculty members across the three institutions to again sort of solicit and better understand perspectives for embedding climate pedagogy into diverse courses. And the findings were quite consistent and aligned with what we had learned at the symposium before. First off, faculty are really interested in those authentic experiences that they can offer students in the classroom. So not just speaking about climate change education, but really engaging students in the process in authentic ways through typically experiential learning. We also learned through that research study that collaboration is really important for our faculty members. They want to collaborate with individuals from diverse programs and diverse areas of expertise to really help to build upon the knowledge that they have so they can be confident in the classroom to deliver this type of education. So all of that being said, Deborah, Michelle, and I had an opportunity to connect this past winter, and we reflected on the symposium that was held in 2024. And as we were reflecting on the symposium, we thought, we should probably do another. We should do a follow-up to really build on those themes. And so that's kind of the genesis or how some of this work started. Now, what we did was, again, we kind of built on those themes, and we have decided that we will narrow in to community partnerships, okay? And recognizing that community service learning, it offers a really powerful learning opportunity, not just for our students, but for our community members as well. So we can engage in these active learning experiences that provide meaningful and tangible impact. And so that's where we're at today. With lots of help from various community partners who I see in the audience, and also from faculty and staff across the 3 institutions, we have put together our program today. Now, we will address 3 broad objectives with our time together today. The first, to create opportunities for collaboration for climate change education. The second is to raise awareness and drive action on the urgent need for climate solutions. And finally, to promote community service learning, focused on climate education and action. So by the time you leave today, you should feel fairly confident moving forward in those 3 areas. Okay, so before we go any further, I did want to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we gather today, and also to offer one way that Indigenous wisdom will show up in our program. So I will begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather today, the Haldimand Tract, is land that was promised to the Haudenosaunee people of 6 nations, which extends 6 miles on either side of the Grand River. This land is traditionally stewarded by the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Neutral peoples. This acknowledgement, it serves as a reminder of our responsibility to engage in our work today and climate action more broadly, with deep respect and appreciation for the land and its original caretakers. Now, again, we also wanted to point out a very kind of fundamental theme that will weave through the elements in today's discussion and encourage you to reflect on this theme as you spend time with us this morning. So as we were preparing for today, we recognized that we kept coming back to the role of reflective and reflexive practice in learning, especially as associated with community service learning. Particularly, we noted this was a way to really emphasize the interconnected nature and the relational approach of people, nature, and community. And we understand that these practices can be deepened by engaging with diverse ways of knowing, especially through Indigenous perspectives and Indigenous wisdom. So with that in mind, we encourage you to kind of keep that front of mind as we work through the following sessions together. Now, we'd originally planned to spend quite a bit of time making sure that everybody, again, was on the same page regarding the urgency of climate action, globally, but also within our community as well. But, you know, as a true faculty member, I have to keep things on schedule today. So we will just move through this one very, very quickly. You know, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to come ask afterwards. Or I think I saw Dr. Peter Crank in the audience, too. So we certainly have an expert in the room who can share more knowledge with us all. But anyway, just wanted to make it very clear that there are so many reasons that climate action needs to be urgently acted upon. And I think, you know, we reflect on the events that are currently happening right now. We are on the last day, and maybe some of you have been sort of with maybe cautious optimism like myself, keeping track of the COP30 proceedings in Belém, Brazil, and you'll know that today is the final day. And while I like to approach everything with optimism, I'm feeling a little bit nervous about this one, and I don't know about anybody else, but in terms of the takeaways, you know, there's been just more time spent on security concerns and small fires than really talking about what needs to be talked about, which again is not making more plans at this point, but it's finding ways to commit to the action that has already been promised. So there's so much need for climate action, such an urgency. We see for the first time in history, we had a 2024 hottest year on record, right? 1.6 degrees Celsius higher average temperature than pre-industrialized times. And this year, the World Meteorological Organization, just a couple weeks ago, said that this year is on track to be either the second or third warmest year in history. And we know this is part of a much bigger trend, right? 10 years now that are just incredibly warm. So certainly something that we need to address for a variety of reasons. We know that everybody is at risk here from climate change, especially vulnerable populations and marginalized individuals. So many reasons that we need to take this step. And, you know, as we said, one way we can do this and really arm our students with a sense of agency, empower them so they can get over, they can better address climate emotions, climate anxiety, is that we can connect them with meaningful learning opportunities to take action for climate. And so that's really what we're going to focus our time on as we move forward today. So to provide a little bit of information about community service learning and how this will help to support climate action for our students and our communities, I invite Deborah up to introduce our first speaker, Lisa Jarvis.
Should I use this? It's always fun having an Oprah mic, right? As opposed to an immovable one. It is my real pleasure to introduce the facilitator of our first session today, Lisa Jarvis, who's the Associate Director of Community and Workplace Partnerships in the Career Development and Experiential Learning Center at Laurier. She really does provide strategic leadership and expertise across our multiple campuses, right? So we've got Waterloo, we've got Brantford, we've got Milton, we've got operations in Kitchener as well, to really develop community-based experiential learning for, you know, different programs, all manner of curricula across all of our faculties. And community and workplace partnerships under Lisa's leadership has developed a really well-articulated framework to support faculty who want to embed community service learning into their courses and programs, to really bring community service learning into the classroom and enhance student learning, right? And so when I explain to others what Lisa and her team provides, people are always just amazed. And the team has been incredibly successful. Lisa, I was looking at the numbers the other day. I think that you and your team are providing some manner of community service learning to 4,500 students at Laurier, and that has increased a lot in recent years. So I don't think there could be a better person to help frame out our discussions of community service learning today. So Lisa?
I have my big giant glass of water because my throat is a bit scratchy. Thanks, Deborah, and thanks everybody for the opportunity. Okay, I'll get my face here, sorry. Okay, so I've got CSL and CEL. We've talked about service learning, but I know some people are comfortable with community engaged learning, and we could have a whole symposium on, you know, whether we should call it CSL or CEL. So I've got both up there. But why are we talking about CSL or CEL at our Climate Pedagogy Symposium today? Critical approaches in CSL emphasize the root causes of inequities, critical thinking about solutions, right? It engages the purpose of education conversation. Why are students even at our institutions and in our classrooms? And it is counter-normative pedagogy in the ways that it interrogates what and whose knowledge counts, how it should be delivered, and to what end. CSL in the context or in relation to climate pedagogy fits because we're aiming to bring awareness and attention to the systems that contribute to climate change, the unequal impacts, and equitable solutions, or the need for equitable solutions. It's experiential, it's embodied, it's real world, right? And it's relational. So students start to understand their impact on others, right? And so it fosters curiosity, it fosters empathy, and students tell us all the time that their experiences with community open them up to different perspectives. The other thing I wanted to lead with is pedagogy of hope, right? And hope needs practice. And in CSL, students are active. They are practicing, they are on scene, they are with folks, right? They can, I guess CSL can illuminate hope for a better society, for a better climate, because they get to see the people in the community, some of you here today, who are doing it, right? They have hope because they see you're doing it, they get mentorship to do it, they build skills to do it, and so, they leave with some hope. And a more early 2000s campus compact report, and I think it's still relevant today, noted that post-secondary students believe that the range of dynamic and complex social problems, including climate action and climate questions and challenges, are too overwhelming to know where to start, not worth addressing at all, or requiring a different approach than they've traditionally been sort of introduced to or what they see as available to them. And so they need hope, right? There's overlapping, value in wanting to be accountable in our partnerships. So we recognize that there's power differences, right, in university and community relationships, but we name them and we negotiate them together with our partners. So it's a coming alongside, as Patty Clayton, who's a prominent academic in CSL, would say, right? So we talk a lot about reciprocity. I get something, you get something, but she talks about this coming alongside. I love this arm-in-arm kind of vision. And I also love this vision of engaged witnessing, right? Students can witness the work that community is doing, come alongside with them, and work with them. CSL offers students emotional engagement, so we talked about climate emotions, right? So it offers them the chance to engage and reflect on those things. It offers a justice orientation, critical awareness, and the skills to tackle pressing issues of the day, including climate questions and challenges. So what are we even talking about, right? There's lots of definitions, but I guess really simply, faculty and programs integrating their course or program content, the theories, the principles, with some type of community engagement, and helping students apply their skills and learning to a community partner, whether that's in placements or projects, and helping them connect all of it through graded critical reflection components. And our beautiful team of ed dev folks later will help you to look at syllabus kind of considerations for those graded components. So at Laurier, we have a menu of options, right? We talk about our menu of options, or a continuum of things that we do. Placements in the context of CSL is students going out into the community off campus, volunteering with our partners. Or they're doing projects in class, but they're the projects that were defined and developed in partnership between faculty and community partners, where the outcome or the deliverable is named and prepared alongside the community partners. And usually there's a fair bit of class time given to the project work, and it's kind of a centerpiece for the whole course. But what else? I think what we're doing, sometimes we're applying CSL and CEL principles in other forms of work-integrated learning. So think about your practicum requirements in some programs, right? How can we engage with our partners in ways that value authenticity and that witnessing, right? How can we embed climate, themes and topics in a range of selection and opportunities that students have to choose from. So we do that in some of our programs. And then I know on a call this week, someone asked me about in-class engagements, right? Or guest speakers. Is that CSL, right? So I have these two little LinkedIn posts there, and this is because it's sort of this continuum where our early second year Intro to Sustainability course, right, on the bottom there, it's not in-class guest speaker, but they just do one brief exposure type field trip, if you will, right? They go out to St. Jacobs, to Baden, to Ayr, to Nunadee, all these townships that we've worked with over the many years. It's about 150 students, up to that amount of students in this class. They do the one engagement with a partner. They hear about the community, some of their opportunities, the challenges, what's happening. And then they go back to their course, and in groups, they're gonna, throughout the course and in the term, they're gonna develop some sustainability initiatives that respond to some of what they heard from the partners. So it's, again, this very brief exposure type engagement, all the way to our capstone course in the Urban Sustainability Project with the City of Cambridge, right, where it's a full year course. We spend time in the spring, in the summer, developing the projects with the city. What do they need? And then the students spend all year doing research, doing preliminary pitch presentations, getting feedback, refining it, and finally pitching at the end. And it's a case competition, and there is a cash prize from the city at the end. So that gives you an idea of the range of things. So how do we even do this, right? What do we start with? And these, there's so many beautiful people here I know already doing it, and you're going to hear from them on the panel, so please listen to what they have to say in terms of what's worked and what doesn't work, both for the community and for faculty, because we all have our own opportunities and challenges in our own contexts. But of course, the first thing is to build trust, right? Through open and honest communication, showing up for our partners, going beyond just observing and even participating, but look how you and your students can be agents of change with your partners, right? Alongside them. Be passionate. You're all here, so I know you're passionate, right? There's no question. But I see the faculty we work with, folks from the Sustainability Office who partner with us so much, and the staff that I work with, right, nothing energizes them more than when they're out in the community. I had one coordinator, she spent the whole day showing a professor around downtown Kitchener, the different sites of the working center, going through Gowdy's Lane and looking at the artwork. And she came back to the office just very ready to do the work, right, because she had spent time with partners. Be accountable, right? So for our project successes as much as our project failures, own when things go a little off track, be adaptable, be flexible, right? I would say that I know I'm in a good partnership when a partner can call me and tell me what's not going well, right? When they say, you're emailing us too much. I can't manage these emails from Laurier. Or the students that you sent us, like these are some of the things we're seeing that don't work for us. And so I know that's a good partnership when they trust to give me that feedback. And those are partnerships built over many years, right? And of course, you're building in that shared decision-making, not just at the outset of the project, right, when you're looking at what the deliverable is and what the students are going to be doing for the partner or with the partner, but along the way, right? Real, authentic ways of letting the partners share in decision-making. Now, it's not without its challenges. I'm an optimist too, so I'm talking pretty much wholly in positive light, and I will always, probably to my grave, about CSL and CEL. But of course, it's people work, right? It's humans working with humans, and so it does require that flexibility and that adaptability. We have to hold grace for our own context, right? The cultural differences in the ways that we work. Bureaucracy, the time it takes to make decisions sometimes in a post-secondary institution, the forms we have to fill out, right, for our partners, the agreements that they have to make, the intellectual property thinking, the NDAs, all these things that come up across our desk around paperwork and bureaucracy. And it all takes time. And sometimes financial resources as well, which we know in nonprofit organizations and with our partners and in post-secondary institutions, these things are not often in excess. So we have to think about that. Again, name it negotiate it with our partners. When we name our limit, we know what we're striving for, but we name our limits. I think that's the best we can do, right? And our partners will appreciate it. And finally, I alluded to this earlier, but just one challenge I think we have to think about is the preparedness of students. How do we prepare students to go out? And so when I gave you my example of, intro to sustainability all the way to capstone, how are we introducing students to community early in their time with us, and then giving them opportunities to practice critical reflection, to engage in more intensive ways, all the way to a capstone, a 120-hour practicum, rather than throwing them out there in fourth year, right? With no experience, and expecting them to reflect critically when we haven't given them the opportunity to practice it. Hope needs practice. So I say all these things that are like considerations, challenges, but just do it, right? If we wait for it to be just the perfect thing, we know we're not going to solve every challenge, climate change itself, of course, all of our justice-doing objectives that we have, but we're arm in arm, and we're nudging closer to them when we just do it, right? So I like that top quote by acknowledging that, it's not going to be perfect. We kind of free ourselves to just be able to do it. And this one for me is really big. It's just that we are sending, you think this streaming group of 4,500 students now a year at Laurier going out with some skills, with some sense of what their values are, and wanting to connect that to their careers, like that does give us hope. So a few other Laurier specific examples that I can share. And again, I know our panels are going to share some of the work that they're doing together as well. So I'll just try and, again, give you a broad overview of different types of models. So again, this is interesting, Powering Earth. It's a second-year course, probably 80 to 100 students, depending on the year. And we mix in industry-engaged projects and community-engaged projects. We've got some sustainability office folks there because they're often a partner in this course. And students are looking at a communication center project, right, with partners like Reap Green Solutions. They did a guide for them. With our sustainability office, they did some energy mapping. They did an energy dashboard. So again, it's I would say it's a little less engaged in that the deliverable for each group, they're always going to be doing the same project, but it goes to different partners, if that makes sense. Whereas in 383, and I think, is Dr. Alexis Buttigieg here already? No? Oh, she will be with us, I guess. So in 383, this is more, we have probably 6 to 8 partners, and the projects are very different depending on the partner that your student group is with. And they're applying, different, theories or principles in psychology to look at how behavior change might happen for some of our partners. So, and these are some of the water watchers. They were doing some work with Groundwater Festival. And they also work with Reap Green Solutions. Great. And then we heard this morning this idea of not just using climate pedagogy in like environmental studies courses, right? So this interdisciplinarity. And so we are trying to do that with CSL and CEL. So in our social entrepreneurship option with our partnership with the City of Waterloo, often those projects have a sustainability theme to them. So waste reduction being a big one. And students in their capstone course developing a social venture, they have the opportunity to kind of go off and do their own social venture, or they can engage with partners. And year over year, we've had folks working with the Working Center and their Climate Action Resource Center, and I see Joe here at the back to tell us more about that later. Shelley, you teach marketing. I was saying we do some things in marketing courses, right? So market research, they've engaged a partnership between Neuron Mobility, the scooters, electric scooters, and our Laurier Sustainability Office. And Neuron Mobility wanted to engage more post-secondary students in and accessing their product, and it meets our objectives at Laurier in terms of our sustainability office. So they did a project together and looked, did market research with our students on campus. In our Master of Applied Politics program, students do a 90-hour research practicum, and again, we always try and have one or two climate or environmental focused organizations. Sustainable Waterloo Region has been a partner. We've worked with the Bay Area Restoration Council. So we always have an option because we know one is of interest to students. Some students those are their career interests, and then it's good to again try and represent lots of different pressing social and political issues for those students. And in our Arts Global experience, those students again are doing more of a practicum type thing, 80 hours in the spring term, and we've had many go out to Rare Charitable Reserve doing eco monitoring and food programming and all kinds of good things with that partner. So, in the spirit of moving along nicely, right? Because we have such a packed schedule. I'm happy to take any questions or comments from the group if we can keep talking about CSL and a framework for that. Yeah. That's a great question. I always ask my students that. What does community even mean? What does community mean to you? Yeah, so I think for us at Laurier, it's mostly hyper-local, right? Kitchener-Waterloo or Waterloo Region. In our Brantford campus, pretty local to Brantford proper, but Brant County as well. And then, we do have students in placement type experiences. We do have a process where students can self-initiate. So if they need a placement in Toronto or London or wherever they're from because they're living at home, we have a process where they can go find their own thing, have it approved by us. So sometimes we go a little further outside, but generally we're talking hyper-local in our own campus kind of areas and regions, yeah. So that students can, even in the project-based courses, they might need to go off campus for a milestone check-in meeting with our partners. We might build that in. And then partners often come to campus for final pitch presentations, and that's so we try and make it easy. But we, obviously with technology these days, we Zoom partners in sometimes from other places if they are further afoot. Sure, yeah. It's a partner in the community doing the work that you want to expose your students to. So whether we've had some models, because we do a lot of virtual asynchronous courses too these days, right? So we have students where the faculty might tape do a video interview with the partner, and students have to watch that, and they hear through that sort of the community perspective, the community voice, and they integrate that into whatever project or assignment that you're doing. That's like, especially if you have a big course, that's a nice model in first year, right, to introduce them. You've got someone speaking in class, or you've done a Zoom or an interview that they're watching and recording, and then students, in some other assignment, they have to take that, you have to see that they're integrating that community perspective and voice into their assignment, and then you might have an additional reflection type activity as well. So yeah, if your contacts, the most important thing is you have relationships and contacts with those folks in Toronto, right? So that's the biggest part, right, is that where you go where your relationships are, and some partners, we've had partners, we just had in a poli-sci course, a guy come in from Niagara because he was so excited to hear and meet our students. So some partners will be happy to travel, and of course we're providing all those good things like parking and some food or coffee before offering, these are the nice community type things that we try and do even as we talk about budgets and things, but we certainly do have people coming in from further than the Waterloo region. Yeah. We wouldn't necessarily require our students to go outside of campus kind of regions, but we do post sometimes opportunities, and they can self-select that if they would like to be with that partner in London or Toronto or wherever it is, and even students can choose that and then find their own way there, etc. Yeah. Good question. What do we mean by community, right? Any other comments or sharing? I know all of you are doing some of this too already, so yeah. Nadine. Ah. Oh, right. Sure. Sure. So those who might critique the language of service might say that that keeps us in helping or charity models, right, of service learning, so that you can kind of think of the served and the server, right? And so community engagement, is that more reflective of what we're doing in nurturing partnerships and relationships? I'm comfortable with service language myself. I think it's okay for students to think about being of service to their community, being engaged with their community, but I also understand the critique and the history of harms that have been done in community university collaborations, where we are thinking our students are going to go and help give back, sometimes is the language, right? And then not honoring that it's actually the community knowledge and expertise that our students are gaining, right? It's not one-sided. You know, it might not be equal, reciprocal, right? It might not be equal, but everybody is sharing knowledge. And so sometimes service language is critiqued because it does maybe conjure up more of those images of helping, helpy, the poor, these kinds of things that are problematic, right? So we do want to always stay cognizant of them. But then in practice, what does it really look like, right? So whether you call it service or engagement, I think what the rubber hits the road is when you're doing it, right? And what do you think the language that best reflects your own practice, and go with it? Yeah. Yeah.
Just a quick question about your specific role maybe within the institution.
Sure.
So do you collaborate with faculty and different courses to be able to connect them with different, I guess, partners within the community, or how does that work?
Sure. Sure. So we're very fortunate at Laurier. We have a centralized model of delivery. So our office we work with faculty who want to do this type of thing. We have a network of, I think at the last time I pulled our contact list, it was almost 1,200 contacts, unique contacts, 500 or so organizations. We think school boards, right? Every teacher that we work with, those kinds of things, so it gets big. So we hold that there's that institutional framework around the relationships. And not that faculty don't develop their own relationships with the partners that we introduce them to, or that they don't bring their own partners to the work. But if the contract faculty leaves, the professor retires, the relationship still, or they're not teaching the course, right? Sometimes you just get a new prof for that course in 1 year. We can still run the experiential learning opportunity, and we can still serve our partners in those ways. So we are centralized. We work with faculty in collaboration with our educational developers to look at their syllabus, what model works best, what kind of partners, what are the graded reflection components, and then we start to bring in those partners and make those connections. Yeah. And we manage all the SHRM thing, like the health and safety forms and risk management that faculty, really, it's so much. And we have this beautiful, across, our office is centralized, but we have our professional schools that have their own field offices. But I can go in any day and find out if social work already has an agreement with so-and-so, and it's really beautiful, because then again, when you think about accountability and relationships with our partners, we're not 7 people reaching out to the same partner with a different agreement every year, So it's beautifully, I guess, campus-wide that way, which we really are grateful for. We've spent a lot of time trying to make it easier for our partners to know who to connect with. And because they have a relationship with our office, sometimes it's not experiential learning they're looking for, but I've had partners say, well, I just call Shannon if I need anything at Laurier, because that's their point of contact and reference at Laurier, and then we can connect them with the right people that they're looking for. If they want to do a booth on the concourse, if they want to talk to Career Center about posting full-time positions, if they want a faculty who might be interested in research with them, or a grant application, say. Okay, I think we're almost at 9:30, so we'll keep it moving, but I'll be around. I'm happy to chat with all of you through the day.
Okay, that's great, Lisa. Thank you very much. That was a comprehensive dive into the world of CSL, and I suspect everybody feels a little bit more ready to get out there. And as Lisa said, just try it. Just give it a go if you have yet to do so. I also have to say it is incredibly inspiring to hear about the depth of expertise and the processes at Laurier in support of community service learning. And I think there's just, again, a lot of learning that we can take from that. So thank you again to Lisa. And I'll pass things over next to Michelle, who will introduce our first panel of the day.
Wonderful. Thanks, Laura. So we're now moving into our, sort of, we calling it our first session, although that was kind of our first session that we just had. We've got a group of panels from the local community partners, a sample. We've got 6 different community partners represented, so I'll invite them to come on up now to the so-called stage. We've got Brandy Beavis from Health Promotion, Region of Waterloo Public Health and Paramedic Services. So come on up here to the stage here. We've got Kira Chisholm from Climate Action Waterloo Region and Sustainable Waterloo Region, Anna Ristic from the City of Waterloo, Anna Marie Cipriani from the City of Kitchener, and Joe Mancini from the Working Center, and we're going to be joined by one other person who's on her way, Hannah Wellings from Wasakta Winawak Collective. So thank you all of our community partners for joining us for this panel. We wanted to have this panel so that we could hear directly from community partners what kind of climate action are they doing, and from their perspective, what works and maybe also what doesn't work when university and college professors come to them wanting to partner. So we're looking forward to getting some insights to understand what kind of climate action these community partners take already, and then also digging in a little bit to what works and doesn't work. So we're going to start with Brandy. I'll introduce you. So Brandy Beavis. Sorry, I'm going to need my notes. This is Brandy here. She's a health promotion and research analyst at the Region of Waterloo Public Health in the Health Protection and Healthy Environments Division. Brandy's got over 10 years experience with the health unit, planning, implementing, and evaluating health promotion and protection programming. There's a long list of things here. Health communications, policy development at the local level in consideration of Health Canada's climate risks. Her current portfolios at the region include climate change, extreme heat and cold, air quality, emergency preparedness, and contaminated sites. And Brandy was responsible for leading the climate change and health vulnerability assessment for the region of Waterloo as well. And she often shares these findings with academia and students. And I know that Brandy has partnered with one of our professors at University of Waterloo, Warren Dodd, in the past as well for a course that he teaches on the ecological determinants of health. And he told us about that from his perspective last year. So Brandy, tell us a little bit, what kind of climate action, I mean, that gives us a little sense, do you engage in? And what other experiences have you had working with universities and college classes?
Is this on? It is. Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here and to meet all of you all. I think this is a really great opportunity to engage, and I think this is exactly what I've been asking for for a long time. When we engage as community members, often we're on a one-on-one relationship, and so to have so many people in the room to kind of share a pitch all at once is really beneficial. As you all know, you guys are busy, we're busy, so this is a really good example of what I think should continue. So at Region of Waterloo Public Health, we've engaged with academia in many different ways. So supporting master's students on thesis work, coming to courses and giving a little lecture on our climate change vulnerability assessment. I have some documents at the back there if you guys want any of these for your collection. We've worked on research grants with academic professors. Peter Grant, we've been working with you as well. We've had lots of engagement with institutions, and this is the ultimate right now. So this is what I would encourage in the future. any way that there's coordination between the, even if it's just within your individual academic institution and the public health unit, or any, I'm sure, of our colleagues here, any kind of coordination is helpful, because we often get requests from you all, and we love them, and we want to participate in them all, and sometimes it's just not possible. So any kind of coordination is definitely helpful. Any kind of what would be the word, like filtering through to the students. We get a lot of emails from students, so I'll come and do a lecture at a course, and then I'll get like 50 emails, and like, I can't do that. So any kind of filtering with the professor is really, really helpful to help them understand, you know, is there a way that maybe the professor can reach out with a collection of questions from the students? Also, if students are looking for positions at the institution that we're, like, for public health, you know, we can provide them with the link to that, as opposed to connecting and giving me their resume and their personal information. I don't want their personal information. So those kind of things are really helpful. Other ways that we have engaged with academia or courses in the institutions would be perhaps giving pitches for a policy brief that the students can then work on. So I've done that with Dr. Dodd. Come in, give a lecture about how we engage related to climate change. From a public health perspective, I'm sure, as so many of you know, there's so many different ways that you can work on climate change, whether it be on heat adaptation or vector-borne disease, or there's just so many. So we can come and say these are some of the things that we're having challenges with. You guys use your great ideas and your innovative thought processes, your whatever kind of spin that you're taking on in your courses, and then they can build a pitch, work on a project, and then maybe share their results with us in a final project or things like that. So those are ways that I personally like to engage. From having a student at the health unit, that would likely be in a practicum position rather than more of a casual kind of engagement. So, and that would be more formal through our kind of human resources department. So this would be more of like, you can come and have a lecture, share some great work, and then kind of, when we're thinking about all this stuff, there's so many problems we want them to solve. And so kind of putting that in their place to show us their potential solutions. So, yeah.
Thanks, Brandy. That's great. We're going to hear more from you. So we're going to go through each of them, learn their perspectives, and then we'll have a conversation across and address a couple questions. So we're going to go in alphabetical order here. So we've got Kira Chisholm next. Kira, do you want to wave so they know who you are? If you don't know her already, she's the plan manager for Climate Action Waterloo Region program. And in her role, Kira facilitates partnerships among regional municipalities, local energy utilities, and community organizations to advance climate change mitigation efforts across Waterloo Region. So her work focuses on building and nurturing relationships between all of these interest holders. I like how you didn't use the word stakeholders, sort of different terminology there. Guiding and executing strategic project planning, managing external communications to engage the broader community in Waterloo Region. Kyra's leadership helps make sure that the Climate Action Waterloo Region plan remains dynamic and inclusive and a real force for progress in our community. And so in that capacity also, you work for Sustainable Waterloo Region. Yeah, you'll tell us more. And REAP Green Solutions. So it's a collaboration between several community partners. So Kira, tell us a little bit about, I can give you another one, about some of the work that you do and how Climate Action Waterloo Region has engaged with post-secondary institutions.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so I have the pleasure of working both for Sustainable Waterloo Region and REAP Green Solutions, which are two nonprofits in the environmental space here. Climate Action as a program has engaged in a couple different courses over my time at least. The Environment, Psychology and Action course that was mentioned. One that was I believe it's a knowledge integration and environment and business course Erin's at the back nodding. Okay, great. And then a few others at Conestoga as well, whether it's sort of like a guest lecture turned into some sort of a project with a student, or the students are responding to some sort of challenge or problem statement that we've outlined. But perhaps some of my favorite engagement has actually been in sort of like the extracurriculars for students in participating in hackathons or social venture challenges. We recently just did one with the Experience Ventures at Conestoga. We were the partner this term. And we've been partners with Greenhouse in the past as well. So it's fun to be a coach and a judge and participate in the day and get to share our knowledge with the students, hear their really good ideas, and be able to get really different perspectives. And it's fun when you get an engineering student and a public health student together and they can sort of figure out how their disciplines cross. So we've definitely done the project-based courses, and those are wonderful, especially when they can sort of extend the capacity of our team, create a bit of like a social media campaign that then we can run for 6 weeks. That's awesome. I don't have to come up with content for 6 weeks. But yeah, those hackathons are another really great way to engage with students and get them to be thinking cross-disciplinary on a real-world climate challenge.
Thanks, Kira. That's great. Lots going on there. And by the way, we're obviously, you can see this, we're flashing them, and that the QR codes will take you to each of our community partners' websites where you can find out a little bit more about the work that their organization does. Okay, so next, going in alphabetical order, we've got Anna Marie Cipriani, who grew up in Hamilton, Ontario, with her family, who immigrated here from Italy, and she was the first member of her family to attend university and has an undergrad and a master's degree in planning from the University of Waterloo, and she's a registered professional planner with the Canadian Institute of Planners. Anna Marie, although you work for the City of Kitchener now, you worked for a long time for the City of Waterloo, so she's well familiar with what's going on in Waterloo region throughout. And when she worked for the City of Waterloo, she was in various roles ranging from student laborer right up to new positions in environmental protection and sustainability, and also an executive role. But for the last 4 years, she's been with the City of Kitchener as their corporate sustainability officer, and her work includes a corporate and community focus on climate change mitigation and adaptation. So Anna Marie, tell us a little bit about the climate work that you do and any experiences you've had in working in collaboration with classes from post-secondary.
So I'll start off by maybe adding something that we haven't touched on yet. I want to recognize Joe, who in 1997 came to environmental thought at UW, and I was a student there. And he said something, okay, so in 1997, Joe came to my class of environmental thought in the Faculty of Environment, which the program then was called Environment and Resource Studies. He said something along the lines, you know, if you had a good paying job, you could work part-time and serve the other rest of your life to community. And that stuck with me. So for the first 23 years of my career at the City of Waterloo, my first permanent role was only approved through council part-time. So I took that as a permanent role after having left my studies in medicine and worked part-time in that environmental protection role. And I served community in all the different ways that meant for the next 23 years. And I also moved into, first time ever, management and an executive role as a woman working part-time at the City of Waterloo. So there's a lot of gratitude for what came from Joe coming to my class. I think it made a huge difference on my life, on my family life, on the decisions my daughter makes in her life, seeking work-life balance that amaze me. And I think I made an impact on community in a lot of different ways. But that likely would not have happened had Joe not come to my class. And I don't hear, the first thing he said is, you know what? I don't go there anymore. That doesn't happen. That program changed. So, how does programming change? And I think also you need to recognize that for each and every one of you in this sector, it ain't easy right now. And I don't think your psychological health is likely, and the sense of safety is likely very high right now. That is going to impact you and how you work how you care for yourself and how you interact with others and build relationship. Because the conditions you are facing are certainly going to be impacting those relationships. So take a moment as you can to care for yourself and what you're bringing to your role as you try to engage community and find a way together with all of us. Kira and her organization, SWR, Sustainable Waterloo Region, started from a half-baked idea that Mike Morris had in his 3rd year at Laurier. He saw something in Silicon Valley, I think while on co-op, and he brought it to our community. And now, more than 10 years later, you have Sustainable Waterloo Region, and I know my life, my quality of life as a resident of Waterloo Region changed because I started to have a network of people. And as an employee, I was no longer a lone employee in my organization. I had peers that were working on this. So you do not know where good ideas will come from. Most of my work over the last number of years have been with graduate students and with master's and PhD students. So I'll rhyme off the kinds of things right now at Kitchener that we're doing, just to give you a flavor of it. So in our stormwater and sanitary utility, we're looking at microplastics loading in stormwater management ponds. We're assessing GHG emissions from stormwater management ponds. We're assessing the influence of buildings on flooding. So those two things are coming from UW Environmental Science and from Civil Engineering. We are looking at hydrogen. So we are one of 2 municipalities that have a gas utility, right? So we have a natural gas utility, just us in Kingston. So it does set Kitchener apart. Municipalities tend to think they're perennially unique. They're not. We serve community, we serve the same services, but in this way, Kitchener is unique. And so one of the things we've been looking at with engineering and mechatronics is what role will hydrogen play in reducing our GHG emissions in our gas supply? What can it do when more than 60% of our fleet are heavy duty and aren't readily electrified, and we're trying to plow your street? So what role does hydrogen play? And so those folks are looking at it. Now through that relationship, the professor linked in with a mathematician at UW, and sparks were flying in the first meeting. The math folks had the ability to model, and they could model the future of pipes under different scenarios. So more gas, less gas, system pruning, system expansion, but also the condition of pipes, because in practice, every 60 years they just get replaced, and there's no real rationale as to why. When some organizations do it, they make money. When a municipality does, my understanding is we don't. So this work, and it was just in the paper this past weekend, it's a 4-year agreement with the City of Kitchener and UW. There is 200,000 direct funding coming from the City of Kitchener and 300,000 coming in kind from staff service. And there are 3 grad and post-grads involved. And so that's the kind of, often the level of work that has, big impact, but it does span, as I've tried to describe, all layers of, and all levels of the academic learning and learning in practice in community.
Thanks, Anna Marie. Okay. That's great, and that was a good segue in the beginning to our next guest, who is Joe Mancini, and many of you will know him from the Working Center, which he and his wife Stephanie Mancini founded in 1982 and have been with the Working Center since that time. So the Working Center is rooted in downtown Kitchener, and the project areas of the Working Center serve well over 1,000 people every day. Including, and the work that they do includes employment and financial problem solving, meal production and distribution. There's the St. John's Kitchen and outreach, affordable and supportive housing, emergency shelters, and social enterprises like a bike shop, thrift stores, and cafes. The 30 projects of the Working Center operate out of 16 commercial buildings and multiplex houses. So they're definitely a force to be reckoned with in our community. But not everybody, I think, associates the Working Center with climate action too. So Joe, if you could tell us a little bit about the Working Center in that sense and any experiences you've had collaborating with universities.
Does this work? I feel like it doesn't. No? How's this? Oh, great. Okay. Anne-Marie, that's a nice introduction, because what you said before about the importance of students engaging with community. And it's one thing to do the academic work, it's another thing to be in community. But then in community, the organization needs to reflect those values and live those values in a important way. Actually, I wasn't going to do this, but I think the work we did with Lisa and the community engagement option at Wilfred Laurier, where university students kind of lived in the Working Center community and also took courses that were related to kind of some of our theory and thinking, and then did placements. The kind of information that came out of those students, what they gained from really engaging the Working Center community, that was just really, really important. And so you just never know how students, what clicks in their minds when they see community in new ways. And there's a difference. There's a business world, there's a government world, there's a community world. And making room for community, I mean, isn't that part of the problem of climate change? That community doesn't have room. And so what I would like to say is, just quickly on Working Center, there's a whole bunch of things, projects of the Working Center where we need real-world change, real-world problem solving. Students can be engaged in real things that we could talk about. There's on a general level, just running a community bike shop is no easy thing. We've been doing it for almost 25 years. It's a project grew out of the University of Waterloo. We've kept it going, but it's always a challenge. Can you get students to learn bike mechanic skills? But it's more than that. How do you deal with all the bikes, all the parts of bikes? How do you recycle them? How do you organize them? These are things that, these are real world problems. It's the same with thrift stores. The gobs of extra clothing, and we have no idea how to use them. How come? Why aren't there better ways to recycle clothing? Like, we have universities and colleges with all kinds of technical knowledge, but nobody knows how to deal with our waste. So we need to be thinking about those things. I think the Working Center is a place where we want to think about those things. We'd help a student any day work through those ideas. So those are mostly, those are the main kinds of things. It's the same with food. We recycle 800,000 pounds of food bank food a year to create about 700 meals a day that are distributed. I don't know, there's just something wrong with that whole equation. Why do we take, 800,000 pounds of food bank food when, where's the community food? Why do we have to use waste food to feed people? I mean, these are big questions. To me, these are climate change questions. And I'll just finish by saying, I think the most interesting thing Working Center is involved in is trying to understand living systems at the community level. And by that, I mean, organizations that are more like organisms, which means high interconnections, emergence, thinking through emergence as a practice in the organization, regenerative practices, the complexity of places and spaces, sharing resources cooperatively, interdependent reciprocity. These are kind of buzzy words, but it's rethinking. Climate change is also about rethinking how we structure society. And we structure society usually from the bottom up, usually from community. And so community needs to be taking those ideas of living systems that are all out there and practicing them. And the more we can get students to see those ideas and embrace them, understand them, research them, see how they live in organizations or help them to live in organizations, that's really important climate change work.
Thanks, Joe. That was great. So we're going to move to our next person. Here we've got Anna Ristic from the City of Waterloo. and is the City of Waterloo's Senior Sustainability Officer. Her work includes moving the City of Waterloo towards a more resilient and lower carbon future for both the corporation of the city and also the community. Our current focus is on integrating sustainability and climate change into all aspects of city operations, from asset management to community gardens, financing, everything. She believes that climate change is not just a consideration of a project, but rather an integral part that should be as day-to-day as getting a coffee in the morning. Nice, okay. And prior to working for the city, Anna worked on conducting risk and resiliency assessments for several forms of buildings and infrastructure, creating adaptation plans for communities. And at home, do you want me to tell them about your dogs? She loves her dogs. She's obsessed. Their names are Ellie and Mira, and she also loves to secretly watch bad reality TV shows when no one's looking. But Anna, would you like to tell us a little bit about some of your projects and also what any experience you've had in collaborating with universities and colleges?
Absolutely, thank you. FYI, Selling Sunset, season 6 just dropped. I think that's an important note. And it's before I jump in, it's so funny. My fiance accuses me of favoritism at home, the animals. We also have 2 cats who did not make the description, and I'm realizing maybe he's right. So hi everyone. So as mentioned, I'm with the City of Waterloo as their Senior Sustainability Officer. And I was originally going to come up here and talk about some of our plans that we have until Laura mentioned, we need to get away from planning into implementation. So we do have quite a lot of plans, but right now what we're working on is really that next step of how do we actually integrate and do this. And I'm happy we've had quite a few opportunities to work with the different post-secondaries here. We've done a lot of undergrad capstone or final projects surrounding, off the top of my head, a lot of heat resilience, climate anxiety, messaging. We're part of the RISE project. I think we have some water work as well in a different department. And one thing that really stood out that I wanted to mention was, I believe it was Lisa who was talking about how there's a point person, and we don't have a point person, and it's a real problem. Does anyone want to guess how we track, or how a city of 160,000 people tracks the projects we do with the university? Excel spreadsheet. So. Which is fine, it goes around and things like that, but obviously it's not maybe the most coordinated project. I think this is something that we're working on improving as we go into the future, so we can have our own point person or team, and we connect with the different ones, which I think would be a really fantastic thing to do. In terms of working with students, and just a couple notes on that, I love working with students. They make me feel so old, and I'm objectively not that old. But it is wild when someone calls you ma'am and thanks you for your expertise, and you're like, I don't think you should be doing that. And so I've really enjoyed it. And one thing that I've noticed within, as working with students, is also something I noticed as a student when I finished my Master's of Climate Change at Waterloo. And I noticed when I started to do my first co-op term that this really phenomenal academic knowledge. I was so happy. I was really excited to start to work, actually on risk and resilience assessments when I started in consulting. And I was like, I'm gonna bring all these case studies, and I know about equity, and I know about this, and I know about this. And then I got to my job, and I was like, so where's all the data? And they're like, well, it's your job to go find it. And I was like, what? And I realized I had no idea how to bridge that, the really academic part of my learning with the practical. And especially in climate change, this was a couple years ago, there wasn't any mentorship because it didn't exist in the sustainability and consulting world yet. Now a little bit more, but at the time I was the first person in the team, and we were just in a very professional way making it up as we went along. And that's something that I noticed with the students as well. So we have to be really careful when we ask for projects, because I think the first time that I started working with a student group, I overestimated the amount of inside knowledge they would have about the city, because why would they? And I didn't structure the project very well because of that. And that resulted in a lot more work on me, because I had to find this information for them and do that kind of thing. And so that's something as I've been doing more and more, I'm trying to scope it out, but it's something I personally don't know how to do very well. And so one of the big things that I'd love to see a little bit more of is that long-term coordination and planning in terms of, I think someone mentioned it really well, what level students are at. Is it an introductory course? Are they a PhD student? And a little bit more collaboration between the professors and us on both ends to make sure that the projects are suited for both what we need, but also what makes sense at a different level of student, right? And I think it's so funny, I think in every single field we say, you know, why aren't you simplifying this? Why are you using acronyms? Why are you expecting me to know this knowledge? And then I switch around and do it myself. So I think that's a big thing that I've learned. And otherwise, yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks, Anna, for that. And then we'll come back to some of these, some of the issues that they're raising when I'd like to welcome Hannah Wellings. Hannah, thanks for joining us. And sorry that you got lost. So Hannah, there we go. She's there. So Hannah is the programs manager at the Wasakta Winawak Collective, which may be an organization that's new to you, and we're looking forward to hearing a little bit more about what you do. Hannah grew up in Caledonia, next to Six Nations, and comes from mixed ancestry, including British, Scottish, and Mohawk backgrounds. She's got an undergrad degree in biomedical sciences and a master's of science degree in human health and nutritional sciences from University of Guelph. And with experience in grassroots Indigenous food sovereignty work and health communications, she brings this passion for food equity and optimistic energy to Wasakta Winawak, to their team. Her work there focuses on land stewardship, relationship building, and food sovereignty leadership. And Hannah is committed to expanding her connection to Indigenous culture and knowledge through this work in land-based caretaking and community engagement. So Hannah, we'd love to hear a little bit more about the work that Wasakta Winawak does, some of your projects, and any experiences you may have in collaborating with university or college classes. And if not, you also might speak to, I think you have had some, or like what it would be helpful for them to do for you.
Hello? Oh, there we go. Just had to turn it on. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here, and it's a privilege to speak on behalf of the organization that I work for, Wasakta Winawak. We call it WASOC for short because it's typically easier for people. In short, WASOC is a group of urban Indigenous people doing land-based work and food sovereignty work. So the word Wasakta Winawak is actually a Cree word that was gifted to the Métis people, and meaning the first green shoots that come up through the land after a fire has gone through. So kind of in short, it means new beginnings, new people. And I think especially kind of in the context of what we're speaking about today, it's after kind of things have been broken down, the new potential and the potential for growth that can happen from that. So we are a group of Indigenous people and settler allies that kind of wear a bunch of different hats. So we're farmers, there's researchers, academics, but we're also, students, educators, and overall just caregivers of the land. I would say our main role is building land-based relationships across the Grand River Territory. So right now, we currently grow and distribute food on about 3.5 acres of land throughout the Kitchener-Waterloo region. So we're doing some work at the University of Waterloo Environmental Reserve, but also in Kitchener, and kind of right downtown Kitchener at the Queen Street, right across from Schneider House. And kind of our main goal and the question that was really started in 2016 with the 3 people who kind of started with Wasakta Winawak, so Dave Skeen, Hannah Neufeld, and Kim Anderson. The question that they were trying to answer is, as Indigenous land-based people, how do we continue to be and practice being land-based in an urban environment? So we don't have access to traditionally our homelands, but even in an urban environment, it is difficult and a challenge to access land and steward the land. because at the core of kind of our belief and our mission is responsibility and reciprocity, especially with the land that sustains us and all the non-human kin as well. So kind of with that question in mind, they've been practicing different farming techniques and food distributing techniques, which is the practical application, but also we want to incorporate the knowledge sharing and the educating piece as well, which is where we've had the gift of kind of collaborating with different students and different academic institutions. The one that comes to mind right now is we've been working at the University of Waterloo on a new course. So their recreation and leisure program, we got to help co-design and then lead a new course. So I believe I'm blanking on the actual name of the course, but I think it's outdoor recreation and land-based learning. So what does land-based learning look like in a classroom in a university? So we've been able to use the university environmental reserve and have students come out every week and just learn on the land. And so it's been really fun and inspiring seeing these students who are so used to just learning in a classroom and kind of like doing things very like rigidly, being like, okay, what do we do next and what do we do next? And in the seminar, there's a lot of downtime, which I think students don't know what to do with. And they'll be like, okay, I guess I'll like go on my phone, which I think is like a lot of our reaction now. But really trying to remind them of what being land-based means, and you have this limited time outside, and it's been really inspiring seeing their reflection over the course of the semester. We'll do a circle at the end and say, okay, one thing you're grateful for. And at the beginning, some people are like, my pets, which like, of course, I am grateful for my pets as well. But over the course of the semester, we see, I'm grateful for the time on the land I get to spend when I have to go back to class later on, and those kind of things. And it reminds me and us of our question of like, how do we be land-based in urban environments? And then the name of WSOC of kind of, we took this old course and we broke it down, and now we're kind of seeing like the potential for what it could be and the iterations that it could be in the future in other classes that could mimic that or use that as a starting point. Yeah, so that's kind of the exciting experiences we've had so far.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. Let's give all of our panelists a round of applause. Even though we're not finished with you yet. But it's just great to hear about the work that all of your organizations are doing. And maybe, like, some of you have started to speak to this. My first question is, what are the key elements of a successful partnership? Because, and at the same time, you might speak to, like, no-goes. Like, you started with that, Brandy, a little bit. Like, please don't do this. But, so what are the key elements? Like, what makes it work? And we've heard about different models, like the last one that Hannah spoke to, actually developing a course in collaboration with a community partner where you're co-teaching it, basically, is like the extreme end, I think, of one. But we have all kinds of other models and things. So anybody can start, whoever wants to share. What are the key elements to make this work, a partnership between yourselves and classes, especially if we focus on, like with grad students, we can speak to that a little bit, individual projects, but if we're talking more about a class partnering with you, how can that work? Do you want to start? Sure. And I've got a couple questions, and then we're going to open it up to all of you, and you can ask questions.
So maybe I'll offer one and start kind of at the top, maybe you can filter in if you have maybe a next step. So,
Alrighty. So I'll offer one, and then we can keep handing off. So one of the things that came to mind is that in my undergrad, we had both third and fourth year theses. And so in the third year, the project was to develop an Indigenous medicine wheel at the J. Steckley Heritage Homestead, and it's, as far as I know, still there. So that was a project. And that was a relationship that Larry Lamb, who is no longer living, had with Jean, who is also no longer living. And the fourth year project was with Len Fay, who was manager of horticulture at the city of Waterloo. and he was curious to understand the encroachments at Hillside Park in Waterloo. And so thinking back in my 4th year, that's what I did, is a study and investigation on the encroachments in Hillside Waterloo. So sitting here and thinking, what happened? I then applied to the city of Waterloo and worked as a laborer that summer in forestry. And it was likely a direct result of that close relationship, so for me, with my future supervisor, but also, and this is the one nugget that I'll point to, and then you guys can maybe fill in from there. So Larry Lamb established relationships with peers across the community in different sectors. And so it was with Jean Steckley and with Len Fay. And he, continued those relationships in order to really fit and find projects that would be mutually beneficial. So your relationships with people across the community and with your peers is also really important.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I can't see you. You're okay. This is, I think that one of the things that we would benefit most from is long-term and formalized planning and frameworks for this kind of work. So often, and it's interesting that you mentioned specifically classes, more on the other grade level, often it's very ad hoc. It's who we met at a conference or who we met at an event, and they'll email us, oh, can you do this? And then we really do love working with students in the community, so we do try, but sometimes that does involve coming up with projects rather quickly that maybe don't fit with the work we're doing, especially if it's not a reoccurring project. If it's a reoccurring project, that's a bit different because you've had time to model it and you're just doing a new class in a new time and potentially a new space. But when it comes to the newer projects, kind of knowing last minute, which is not necessarily anyone's fault at the moment, it makes it really difficult to find work that's going to benefit what our goals are, and not just be busy work for students that is both work on us, because there is sometimes, depending on the course, a decent amount of work on community partners, but it might not fit with what we're doing, right? And it's very reactionary on our parts, I think, and so it would be much better and simpler, and I think everyone would be a little bit happier if we had kind of that long-term vision of, okay, if you're going to do part of a course, that's fine, let's talk about it, let's see how it fits, let's see which prof actually makes the most sense to do it out of the professors that are looking, and let's see what level the students can do it at. Let's work on the project proposals together, because as I mentioned, that the level of learning and forming that question can actually be quite difficult on our end, especially when there aren't tons and tons of resources. So I think that would be really, really helpful. I know it's not always possible, but to the extent that it is. And then obviously, the work terms are quite, because you essentially have 2.5, 3 months per semester by the time you get into the swing of things, and that doesn't always work with our schedules very well. So if that can be long-term planning where we know, okay, this is kind of our work plan for the next 4 years. I don't have a work plan for 4 years, but let's say roughly, then we can work a little bit better. And I will say on that note, we're actively looking for students right now for something, and it's funny because I'm like, I know individual people at the different post-secondaries. I don't know who to ask about this, which is wild, right? I know. I was thinking about that. I was like, a bit of a better system for that. I did find when I think it was Waterloo hosted a collaboration event. So a bunch of people from the university came over, and a bunch of people from the city came over, and it was a bunch of researchers, and it was specifically about sustainability issues. And I remember I mentioned a problem, and I just happened to be at a table with a bunch of people who were like, "Oh, this is easy." And I was like, okay, who are you? So a bit more of that formalization, not just in terms of the partnerships, but also in terms of the framework of how we approach these different things, even if it's something as high levels of memorandum of understanding. I know a couple universities have done that in the past, just to be able to smooth that work through as well. And not to add, but the paperwork as well, if it could be more standardized on both ends. Because we do ask questions, are we allowed to just work with the university classes? If we have a master's student, can we just pay them? Does this count as a job? Do we need to interview people? And so that information is kind of nebulous at the moment, and it puts barriers towards working together, I think.
Okay, I think the things I was thinking of built nicely on what Anna said. Some of our most successful projects, especially with undergrad students, have been really sort of well structured into the term with midpoint check-ins and a final outcome where perhaps they have to submit even drafts a couple times ahead, and that's built into the course syllabus so that it doesn't cause the sort of like rush at the end to do the project that's been waiting all term. I think that's not, it's pretty simple, but that has really been a key success factor for us in getting to meet with the students more regularly, and maybe that's more of an ask for the community partner, but certainly it helps the outcomes be a lot stronger. And the other thing I think that we've seen successful, this one was a Masters of Climate Change class, but I think it could be applicable at the undergrad level because that is a course-based master's program. Where the students' time was really sort of built into the course. And so the expectation was really clearly outlined in the syllabus that this was going to be about 3 hours a week or whatever. And then the professor did a really great job of balancing the outside in between coursework with that expectation. So I don't know if that was less readings or whatever, but we had a really successful volunteer contribution from 2 different projects in that course, and I don't think it's operating in that way now, which is too bad because we got a lot of really good volunteers out of that. And that one was certainly more service-oriented for volunteer hours for their credit. But again, it allowed the students to build the time into their week and to make weekly contributions to our organization. And that was a really successful partnership. We got 2 really great projects out of that. We actually ended up hiring a few interns out of that program too, because we got to interface with the students so much and build a relationship. So yeah, I think the structure of the projects really helps, and I'll echo what Anna said is support and help in scoping the projects is definitely helpful. I think we've all overestimated a project or perhaps underestimated a project, and it hasn't been as meaningful for the students as it could have been.
Thanks, Kira. And I think Randy and then
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Just to build on what folks were saying, I do like the idea of a framework, and that might seem nebulous in itself, but maybe even to prepare something like questions to ask for partners, because all of us, various partners, might have different needs and expectations. I don't want check-ins. Nope, I'm good. I would like to come at the end and watch the presentations, and it's just different organizations. Region of Waterloo Public Health is a massive high-level organization. We won't. In some cases, we're very much connected to the community, but from a climate change perspective, we're more looking at the data, sharing the data about vulnerable populations, and then saying, okay, now you guys can think of ways on how you might improve this for this vulnerable population, and then pitch it to the community. And in all reality, our very important community partners who are sitting here are doing the hands-on work. So that's where I say the check-ins midway, that's not going to work for us. But it very well is going to be really important to some of the more ground level hands-on work in the community. So this is where I say the framework might be helpful to have those conversations at first. What would you like to do? How would you like to engage? And what do you have to share, right? Because we're all changing constantly, and your courses very well maybe as well, but in some cases they might be the same for a number of years. So how can we share information to keep you guys informed about our changes without overwhelming you? And then I just wanted to say too, if you do have interest in engaging with Region of Waterloo Public Health, this might not seem like the best route to you, but it is. Connect with the general contact line. There's so many of us. we are reorging constantly. It's just a fun thing we like to do, just put you here and then, just joking. For very good reasons, we reorg. But that being said, we recently have, and so everybody's changed. And so rather than connecting with the one person, it really is beneficial to contact that general information line, public health at regionalwaterloo.ca, or our general info line. You might think you're just getting to the contact center, but that's going to be your best route to the right person. And also possibly other people. The region of Waterloo is a massive organization that has many different routes that you might be appropriately connected with, and the one person that you know might not know about all those things. So it really is a good route into connecting with the right people.
Okay, thank you, Brandy. And I think, Joe, you got something to add?
Yeah, just quickly, just thinking about the best placements for the Working Center has been through Lisa's community service learning. And she made the point about service learning, and that it really does work for the Working Center. You know, the workers that come to Worth a Second Look, St. John's Kitchen, Marita's Kitchen, you know, when I do meet them, they're more generalized, but they're engaged in community in really good ways. And I think it's all meaningful. They all show up. We rely on them. So there must be something good about that, so not to lose it.
And it's not an accident that we invited Lisa, because I think Laurier is the only one of our 3 institutions that actually has a focal person to support this and help professors, instructors with the framework and how to make those connections and how to make it work, give them advice. I don't think we have that at Waterloo, but we are working on a teaching tip. My colleague Jenny there is taking notes that we can, in collaboration with the Center for Teaching Excellence at Waterloo, to be able to provide that. And that will be in the public sphere, that'll be on CTE's website and available to people to give some advice to others, like how can we do this right, where we were not a burden for all of you. I had one other question, which was about which topics should be prioritized? Like, what's really pressing in our community when it comes to climate? If you want to give some advice to some of the instructors in the room here about like high priority topics, because this could go in so many different directions. Actually, and I'm going to invite you, Joe, to start with it, because did you want to go with somebody
People from
else?
the city seem to have more practical things.
Or maybe Hannah didn't get a chance to answer to the last one, if you have any thoughts. Like you do a lot of work around food and food sovereignty, and also as an Indigenous organization. Any thoughts on how folks might shape this work with their students?
Yeah, I mean, I think I am a bit biased because our work is so focused on food, but like broader concepts of not just growing food and distributing it, but how you create connection and relationships through that. Because like that's why we're all here today, is to figure out a way to work together to address climate action. And it sounds kind of redundant, or like that we've talked about it a lot, but relationship really is kind of where we start and what needs to be prioritized, I think. Just because of the relationships that we've been able to build with professors and academic institutions has led us to create new things of this, like co-designing a course and just getting people outside on the land, because we talk about being land-based and buzzwords, like you said earlier, like reciprocity, responsibility, and we can talk about them all day in class. But there's a really big difference in actually seeing people experience it for the first time, and kind of the way it can change your perspective and your thoughts and how you continue to move through university or college or any of those things. It really does impact students that I've seen. And kind of what I've been taught too is that food is very central to just creating culture and community. Is when you share food, there's just kind of something that happens where everyone's a bit more open and just able to share experiences, and you kind of like, you lead into doorways of like, oh, like I actually know this and you know how to do that, and we really come together over food. So that's kind of my perspective on that.
Did anybody else want to speak to this question about high priority climate topics? It looks like Kira also wants to see something.
Okay, so in general, looking strategically, climate change is falling in its priority status within municipalities. So, I understand, how we ask the question, what the community comes back with, and then the organization responds. On a given day, you might answer differently. But what we are practically seeing, so as we enter into a strategic planning cycle, all of the municipalities, we are seeing in the data coming back to us that climate change is dropping in priority. So first off, that's important. So then next, for me, as I look at that, how do I continue to play in this sandbox and ensure that climate change is a priority? And so in trying to understand what levers I have and what scope of influence I have in my role, as truly limited as it is in the spectrum of the world as a whole, I look at the nexus of affordability and climate change, because affordability is rising in priority. So it was in the first strategic plan that I worked on at Waterloo, which is the little 2 times ago, where affordability for the first time made the strategic priority, as did equity, inclusion, and diversity. So did Vision Zero. So I think one of the strategic ways of approaching the work is to look at that nexus. So affordability and climate change, to me, raises public health concern of lack of cooling for those who live in multi-unit residential buildings. Primarily in our community, those are the existing affordable housing stock. It is not sexy. It is not getting attention. And maybe the scales will tip and there will be funding. I do see, some indications of that. So for me, how do I make cooling a priority in my scope of influence? So we do have a project, as an example, working with Kitchener Housing Incorporated. It's not owned by Kitchener. And Waterloo Region Community Energy, the region of Waterloo, Kitchener Utilities, and the utilities, in looking at a pilot program with Bloomberg Philanthropies in understanding if we are to do retrofits in one location at one of their assets, what can we learn from doing that? So can we create a case study and then begin to work on developing a social housing retrofit program for our community? So where I'm stumped is nobody's there yet out of the woodwork looking at tenant engagement. And so there's a lot of challenges with the project. We have a defined timeline, working internationally as the only Canadian municipality. That's the kind of nexus with what little influence I have to be very strategic in what I try to do, to work on very strategic and high priority areas and make some impact on our community. That'll give you a flavor of how we can, each of us, try to find where we can continue to make meaningful impact, and how potentially you may be able to work with us. All the profs I've reached out to so far have put me onto others, but I haven't found the right match yet.
Sure, yeah. I'm gonna take this in a bit of a different direction, which is so much of our climate change plan, our community climate action plan, is driven by behavior change and sort of triggering behavior change. And we know young people drive so much of culture, and university campuses and college campuses have driven social movements forever. And so I think we really need to tap into that for students, and be sort of re-inspiring that their ability to change the future and the outcomes, especially at the local level. So one of the big questions that we've been talking about is how do we trigger the culture of active transportation shift? How do we get people to create changes when they're young, when they're in high school and they're looking up to these university students, and then that carries through the rest of their life, that they're building those habits from a younger age? Or getting involved land-based learning to even, create the gardens on their little patio, small garden areas, that changes and evolves throughout their lifetime. And so I think we're really underestimating the power of social change and behavior change drivers that campuses can be. And so those are some of the most interesting questions we've had, and I don't know that I have any real... I struggle with scoping projects around that, but hearing from students, how do we make it cool? How do we make biking, rolling, walking, skateboarding the norm for those shorter trips in our community, and start that behavior change young and be modeling even to the kids following behind them. I think it's a huge opportunity. And I don't have any answers on it, but that's what comes to mind for me is the power of driving culture that can come out of universities and colleges.
Yeah. Again, just going back to that, I think that it's possible to change courses. I love what Hannah's talking about. And we did some of that, but we lost it as well. But we did get Laurier to create 3 courses that were called the community engagement option. And it really did change the model of thinking of the students. And I think that I don't see why there aren't hundreds of courses on the circular economy or on regenerative practices in terms of goods and materials. Food sovereignty sounds like a course, and people need to learn about these ideas. They're not out in the air, or they're not nothing. They're really important to how communities live. The right to housing. Right now, there's at least 400 people in downtown Kitchener that don't have a place to live. They're subjected to the drug culture that takes away their lives. But is there any courses at the university that even think about that? I think that universities, colleges have to be engaged in these kinds of issues and literally change, because we have higher expectations in our society about where we want to go. I agree in the 70s, 80s, when I was at university, these things were maybe more esoteric, but I think now they are real, and we can do change at community level, and we need the universities to also, and colleges, to lead that kind of stuff.
Thanks. And did anybody else want to tie in, or should we get? No, okay. We're getting close to the end of our time, but we're at our time. Are we? We're okay. Let's go. Let's do it.
Super, super fast. And I think it ties into everything that's being said. I think I just want to make a quick pitch for more change management, because I think that's something that we struggle with. I will say municipalities are not super nimble organizations, and they don't like to change. And so we have all this really great research coming out about, how you can integrate adaptation into asset management plans, how you can, how community planners can reduce heat islands, and yada, yada, yada. And that is fantastic from 22-year-olds coming out of undergrad, but the people making the decisions have been out of school for a long time. And they learned a certain way, and that's not to say that they're inflexible, it's just to say that they learned a certain way, and that sticks with you. And so I think from every single topic, every single school, economics, climate, planning, engineering, it's not just here's the thing that you're trying to do, it's the how do you do it, and how do you actually make that happen? So on the nitty-gritty end, how do you introduce new planning concepts when they're not legislation? Because, and we've had this chat before, we are really, really small teams. At Waterloo, we're a team of 1.5-ish. She's a full person, she's just contract. And so we can't go to all of these different places, it's just not possible. And so one of the big things is the engineers need to do it themselves, and then we need to know, or new students coming in need to know, how do we get them to make that switch naturally so that can kind of spread out.
Okay, thank you. And we have run out of time. We had hoped that maybe we could take some questions from the audience as well, but I think some of our community partners might be able to, if you're able to join us and stick around for the day. If you can't, that's okay too. But we really appreciate hearing from you, hearing your perspectives on how we can make this work. It's so important to hear your point of view on this, and give us some tips on what to do and what not to do. And also, I just wanted to reflect on Joe's point, which was, and I think we're all talking about this, this is quite a transformative way of teaching. It's not the norm. It is kind of revolutionary. So the fact that we're all here in the room trying to make this a more mainstream way of engaging with university and college students is a good first step. Like there's lots of examples that's been going on for years, but maybe we can make this more the norm if possible. So thank you so much to all our community partners for all of your insights this morning.